One of the most critical moments in this whole development of Redemption Church was a trip we took to Flagstaff with the leadership team, spent a couple of days together just kind of banging out all the details on this. And one of the things that sticks out in my mind is a conversation we had around the word therefore, right? This idea that our convictions, that we are deeply theological as a church and theologically driven, but that it can't end there, right? This can't be a mind game. That there has to be implications for these things we believe. So we believe in all of life. We deeply believe in a reformed worldview, not just a reformed soteriology, but a reformed view of the world. But kind of building on that Ephesians 2, 8, 9, and 10 of saved by grace through faith so that we can carry out the good works prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them. So these kind of dual values of proclamation and demonstration go together really closely, and I feel like put together our two worlds that we kind of have lived in, on the theological side, the Reformed world, and on the other side, the kind of missional bent and desire we have to really live this stuff out. So maybe speak to some of that and how those things play out.
Yeah, I think on somewhat of a theological level, one of the things I immediately think of is just how much I've been shaped and even brought to the conversation. There's a theologian named John Frame, and he would define theology and add living in the midst of it. That theology is not true theology unless it's lived. And I think this needs to be such an emphasis, especially in our tradition. There's been all this talk about the new Calvinists and all that, but so often that can result to, in churches like ours, some people sitting around a table and just reading Wayne Grudem's systematic theology, but in the end never having that affect their hands and their feet. And essentially we want to put in there as just staple in the fact that is not true theology. Discussion is not true theology. Theology is lived, and then really practically that lived theology is what we're going to hold our staff to when we create ministries. We're going to evaluate the effectiveness on the basis of how is this helping our people live true theology out in everyday life, which is going to affect how we cross boundaries to touch those who are different than us. How we're going to cross boundaries to go after the vulnerable and voiceless. And it's going to affect all the ways that Jesus says a Christian life is to be lived, in compassion and a heart for justice and a heart for righteousness and all of those things. We're going to have those directly in to evaluate how effectively we're doing it.
So one of the big movements in young Christianity is a move towards social justice and really that demonstration arm. But we've talked a lot about how oftentimes even the missional stuff is largely uninformed theologically. Let's say it that way. So we really want to be the perfect combination, at least that's our aim, right? To be the perfect combination of going, we've got to care for the poor, we've got to care for the oppressed, we have to think more tangibly, but it's got to be informed. In order for this to be successful, it's got to be rightly informed by a gospel-centered Reformed theology.
And sustainable. I mean, that's one of my biggest critiques of the missional movement, what I'd call the pop missional movement, is that having no robust theology, just biblical teaching behind it, it'll never sustain itself. Because when you get out and things get really, really hard, I think a lot about Piper's Let the Nations Be Glad, and just talking about if you're going there out of a sentimental attitude of, oh, these people are great and I love them so much and I'm going to get there, and then these people start hating you. If you aren't driven by a desire for God to be glorified in the midst of this, or the kingdom to come to earth as it is in heaven, you're going to quit, which I've seen so often in the missional movement of guys get passionate about social justice, they get out there, it gets too hard, and they resort back to what they've always known. So we would really believe that theology is it's the fire behind the action.
So pragmatism and idealism or sentimentality both break down in those moments. When it's not working, pragmatism goes out the window, and when it gets hard, idealism goes out the window, unless there's that foundation of the gospel and Kuyperian worldview and all those kinds of things. You give up when it doesn't work or it gets hard.